Okay, so before we go into that, I just want to kind of give you guys a little bit of my background, and kind of my experience and why I feel like, I'm qualified, and I use that word very loosely to do this work. So I am Deanna Adeseli. I also go by Dayadhara DD, which is a spiritual name that I was spiritually given by one of my teachers in India. And it means the current of compassion. So I have 17 years in the educational system. Literally, I've been teaching since I was 17 years old. I'm 34 now. And I've actually taught like all subjects, all levels, also all levels of disabilities. I've taught adults English and Spanish, and also science and history and math. So I have a lot of background in the educational system. My bachelor's of arts is in liberal arts or liberal studies, humanities with a minor in religious studies. And I've have 12 years of experience living in ashrams. Ashrams are like monastic things that people, the monks, live through. So I've trained in that way, and I've also studied. That gave me the ability to study for long periods of time, like yogic studies, philosophies, particularly bhakti yoga. But I also have delved into many different lines of yoga. I've also have like 10 plus years working in sweat lodges and with native practices, plant medicines. I really feel blessed to have walked this path for that long. And in the last 5 years, I've been really studying curanderismo, which is how I base my soul retrieval understanding. And I've also been trained in qigong, like I said, like regular yoga, physical practices, tarot, and oracle modalities. And that is actually since I was a young girl. I've been dabbling into the healing arts and divination, things like that. So why soul retrieval? Um, like a lot of you guys said, it's that reclaiming, right? The reclamation of lost soul pieces, particularly through shamanic mind, body, spirit practices. When we hear about soul retrieval, this is coming from a line of like over 100 to 400,000 years of shamanic practices all around the world. I know it's hard for a lot of us to grasp that type of time, but indigenous people have been here for that long, and we've been doing this. Shamanic people, shamanic, elders, ancestors have been able to go through different practices that of the earth, right? Like with drums, herbs, plant medicine, trance, shape shifting. There's so many different ways to do soul retrieval practices. But I really wanted to focus on my understanding from like the Mexica Aztec Mayan way, which is that tonali. And I'm gonna just say this because there's so much to say about soul retrieval. There's so much to say about um, what it entails and how deep you can really go. And I just want to say what I'm going to talk about today is just scratching the surface. I have a whole course on, shadow work and soul retrieval processes where I get very intricate. And I also just want to share one of the like my textbooks that I go to is from my teacher, Erica Buenaflor. Maybe you've heard of her. And she has a book called Curanderismo Soul Retrieval. So a lot of the things that I'm going to talk about today can be found in here, but also I like to look at my Vedic understanding of the soul, which is the Atma, and this idea of consciousness, the sacred essence, the axis mundi. So when we talk about tonali, I'm just going to briefly share a little bit about the understanding of the Mexica and the Mayans. When we talk about the soul in all reality can't be destroyed. It can't be like any of that. Like the soul is always pure and whole within itself. So I just want to make it clear that when we talk about the science of the soul, according to Vedic understanding, Indian, which is one of the most like the oldest scientific understanding of many different themes in life, The Atma, the soul, is never changing. It cannot be created. It's never destroyed. When we talk about soul retrieval, when we talk about lost soul pieces, we're talking about the essence. Okay. So in the Mexica understanding, we have the tonali, and the tonali is actually located at the roof of the head. And then the Ihiotl is another sacred essence that is in the solar plexus. And then also can be considered like in the heart space. Those two essences, those two souls cannot be tainted. They cannot be destroyed. They can't, nothing can happen in regards to that. So just like, understanding that tonali is the sacred essence that can actually escape our energy. And so, again, I'm trying to give these two understandings because a lot of people are like, wait, the soul can have multiple places. It's more of the sacred essence. And then the axis mundi is that sacred heart. And here in this like little diagram, it's not the axis mundi per se, but it kind of shows this idea that, we have these energetic bodies that are basically like a grid. And so all of our energy is being compressed within our auric system. And when we go through traumatic experiences, then parts of our aura, parts of our sacred essence will stay in those experiences. And so that's why we want to look at soul retrieval as a whole process of understanding energy and understanding how we leave these pieces behind. Okay, so the A's. Okay, I kind of I love doing these kind of classes because they challenge me to like, how do I say this in a different way than other master classes that I've had, or maybe put it in a way that you guys can understand, and you guys can take something away. So when I was writing my notes yesterday, I realized I was writing all of these A's. So I wanted to write the A's of soul retrieval. I was gonna say like the 4 A's, but honestly, there's many. So I just wanted to keep it kind of condensed. And again, I'm trying to briefly share with you guys a 400,000-year-old ancient system, right? So the first A's we have are the acknowledge or the acknowledgement and the awareness. And then the next is the accessing, right? And the analyzing. I will make a little note about the analyzing, how it's a little different from what we understand now. And I will kind of go into a little bit of modern understanding of soul retrieval before I move on, actually. And then the attention, right? The attention to the soul piece and the action we take to reclaim it. Before I move on, I wanted to mention that there is a modern understanding, psychological understanding of soul retrieval. This can be considered like the fragmented self. And the only thing that I want you guys to realize about soul retrieval and this type of therapy and healing modality is, even for a psychoanalyst or a psychotherapist who is trying to help you, right, regain that wholeness, there's a need for integration. There's a need for deep understanding of how to embody this, okay? Because we can have all the knowledge, all the theories, all the analyzations, the obsessions almost in our mind, but if we're not dealing with the whole complete self, the body and the spirit, then we're missing a piece. And I also want to say this is not a quick fix. A lot of people, especially in the Western world, we look at healing modalities, plant medicines as a quick fix. That's why I wanted to say it's about attention and action. This is something that you have to be very conscious of. You can't just come into a masterclass like this and be like, you know what? Now I know what soul retrieval is. Now I'm embodied, period. Right? It's an ongoing healing process, but more than that, it's an integration process. And I just want to kind of put that little disclaimer there. If you guys have any questions throughout this little presentation, please let me know. I'm going to try to go through it as not as quickly, but efficiently for time's sake, so we can get into the shamanic journey shortly. So we have this idea of awareness. So acknowledging the trauma, right? Finding its root. This could also be considered like accidents, incidents, heartbreaks, etc. So literally, if you were in a car accident and it was shocking, because that's what trauma does, it shocks the body, it shocks the mind. You can leave a piece of yourself, perhaps in this car wreck, right? And it could be somewhere really far, and that's where it stays. And when we say it stays there, I'll talk a little bit about the cardinal directions and the non-ordinary realms. It's they're not fixed places per se, but there's places that we kind of separate and disconnect from. And again, like we were bringing up, it can be relationships that cause these issues as well, heartbreaks, heartaches. We also want to be able to see, is it the emotional body that is being affected, right? Are emotions going too crazy? Is it the physical? Is it the mental? And then possibly, is it past life situations, right? So if you're going through something that just doesn't make sense for this life, it could be that this was something that happened in the past life. You also want to really make sure you understand how this is showing up for you. Is it recurrent problems, right? If you're constantly in this loop of patterns, even illnesses, this can be identification that there is some soul loss. A lot of people who maybe have gone through a lot of trauma in their lives, they become more sensitive, and then they become more like hyper aware of their aches and their pains. And so people who actually have like and I'm not just saying this from me, but it's coming out more in science. We're kind of blending these therapies, and people are trying to get more holistic with their understanding. But it's kind of shown that like people who have like severe chronic illnesses, fibromyalgia, any of these things, they usually have gone through some intense situations, right? It could be actual accidents, it could be sexual things, it can be so many different things of why they're constantly feeling pain in the body. And that is really the body trying to say there's something wrong here. That's what dis-ease means, right? We're not in ease. And so we want to be able to see and become aware of what is this dis-ease and what is the root to it. Okay, so the second one, access and analyze. Now, before I go into this analyzing and what this like, I want to make sure that we understand. Analyze does not mean to become obsessed. Obsession leads to worry, it leads to stress, it leads to so many different things. And so when I say analyze, I really mean like sitting with the uncomfortableness. Or let's say there's a question you have. You're like, I don't understand. Why does this always happen? Instead of trying to figure out the answer, why don't you just sit with the question and let the answer come to you? Okay. So that was like my little disclaimer about the word analyze. So access, we're accessing or entering into the subconscious mind. How do we do that, right? A lot of us, as it's becoming more normal, like this meditation, and I like to, call it shamanic journey, guided meditations, visualizations, hypnosis even, is a big thing right now, and the way that we can do this soul retrieval. Also, it's very important, especially in the Mexica, the Mayan understanding, is the medicine of the cardinal spaces, okay, which means the directions: north, south, east, west, the elements: fire, water, air, ether, earth, and the non-ordinary realms, which is it's underworld, middle world, upper world, and then also the utilization of the quincux, which is a part of the directions. Why do I say this? Because when we access these non-ordinary realms, again, when I say non-ordinary realms, I'm talking about the subconscious mind and the energetic field all around us, because there is a grid all over the earth. Again, science is proving this now, but we've been talking about it and I say we because my lineage is, we've been talking about this field, right? This energy field that is around us at all times. And so we can tap in to these non-ordinary spaces, like the west direction, which a lot of times in soul retrieval, we are, well, I'll take that back. Each direction has its medicine. And so sometimes we go to the south because we need to understand, we need to discover what's happening. Sometimes we go to the west, which is that underworld, going through the process, going through, that deep understanding, that deep shedding energy. The north, the ancestral medicine. We're gonna talk a lot more about this as we go into the journey work. And then the east, that new beginning, but especially in soul retrieval, because we are decolonizing and reclaiming our soul pieces, we start at the south. Okay, so when I do which I just realized I don't have a lighter, but I'll get one shortly. When I open up the sacred space for us to journey, we're going to start out at the south, because the south is going to help us journey all the way and get ready for the east, which is that new beginning, that new cycle. It doesn't make sense to start at the east, that new beginning, if we're still having to do work in the other directions. And then there's always the center, which is the sacred heart. And then there's the heavens, and then also Pachamama below us. Again, there's different understandings and directions. Different, people say different things for different cultures. What I'm going based off is more Mexica and also Lakota understanding of directions. Other ways that I already mentioned that we can access is through shamanic shape-shifting techniques, using animal medicine, trance, meditation, right? Any questions right now before I go to the next point? Are we good? Okay. All right. No questions. Thank you. All right. So the last point that I'll make is, all right, so we've done the work, right? We understand how to become aware of these things and explore it and access the subconscious mind. What do we do now? Well, it's the attention and it's the action. So when we're welcoming lost soul pieces, it is not a quick fix to your trauma, like I was saying. Our inner child, our teenage self, which today we're going to be working with the teenage self, the trauma, right? The trauma self, like let's say you actually went through an accident or something, needs time for closure and resolution. This is not a race. Okay, anyone who says like, well, first of all, I don't agree that healing is forever, but there is a point where we should move past certain things, but we can't just bulldoze it. We have to take our time. We have to know that healing takes time. Imagine, okay, because this is what I say to a lot of my friends and my clients. If you're 34 like me, and I have been doing the work, okay, I've been doing the work, but let's say I haven't. And it's been 34 years, and finally I came to this class and I'm like, you know what, yeah, I'm gonna do this. And then I do one shamanic journey and I'm like, all right, I'm on fire, and then bam, things happen bad and I go back to some old patterns. Does that mean that what I did wasn't working? Like, then I start doubting it. It was 34 years has passed. How much have you endured in 34 years to think that in 1 year, and that in 2 years, that in 3 years, that you're going to clear away 34 years? What to speak of past life, right? Past lives. So it's really about finding your pace, your rhythm, and understanding that our soul pieces also need the time to process and to heal. So you cannot force soul pieces to come back to you. Rather, you create a safe space for them and provide what they need. For example, if it's your inner child, let's say you've gone through some deep, I've been working a lot and I myself have gone through like molestation, right? What does our inner child need if we have gone through this? They need safety and reassurance that they're safe and that they can open up and be vulnerable with people, right? And share and speak their voice. So we want to create that space. Maybe there's a little bit of exposure therapy, right? Talking to your family about, what has happened. But it's really not about like ripping the Band-Aid off and then being like, okay, it's all exposed now. But it's really making sure that we're doing what we need to do. In curanderismo, in the shamanic practices, there are many different techniques that we can do through herbs, plants, community ceremonies. journaling. Dancing is a great one, but a lot of just reassurance, reaffirming, reprogramming, um, creating those new neural links in our brains to actually feel safe again. So that is kind of the A's of soul retrieval. I hope that you guys can take something from this. If something is new, if it sounds familiar, it's great. Then let's do the work, right? Let's go into this shamanic journey. So one thing I